Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for tuning in and checking out my latest video. Now, this video will be talking about the matchup between Keith One-Time Thurman versus Robert the Ghost Guerrero, which will seen by millions of people around the world on NBC, which is great for the sport of boxing. Thank you, God, and thank you, Al Heyman, for making this happen. And you got to give Al Heyman credit for doing this because this is going to be great for the sport of boxing. And I like the card that he put together. And Keith One-Time Thurman, he wanted to step up in competition, and he is going to have one in Robert the Ghost Guerrero. Now, let's talk about Robert the Ghost Guerrero first. Robert Guerrero, when I look at his skill set, he has a nice straight left hand, he works the body, he loves to fight on the inside. You've seen that in many of his matchups. And when he fights on the inside, he is a very tough fighter on the inside and uses some dirty tactics as well. So that's something that Keith Thurman needs to watch out for this fight. Robert Guerrero also stands out of the southpaw stance, and he's a guy who has a heart and excellent chin to go along with that. So he's a very durable fighter when you look at his skill set. And he has been on the big stage before because he fought Floyd Mayweather in recent years. Came up short in that fight, but nonetheless, that was a good experience for Robert the Ghost Guerrero, being in the upper echelon of the sport and being involved in a big fight. That's something that he's going to have an advantage going into this matchup against Keith One-Time Thurman. Now, when you look at Keith One-Time Thurman going into this fight, I see a guy who is feared by most fighters of the 147-pound division. I think Keith Thurman is the biggest puncher at 147 pounds. And when I look at Keith Thurman, some of the skills that I see, a nice left hook, he really works the body. I like his uppercuts, his straight right hand. Very interesting fighter to watch because if you watch his last fight with Leonard Bundu, you saw that Keith Thurman can box and is patient throughout the fight. And something that really caught my eye was in his last fight when he was boxing, a lot of the fans were booing him. And I was waiting to see if that was going to affect his composure or get him off his game plan. It did not do so at all. He stuck to his game plan, and it showed me that Keith Thurman can stick to a game plan throughout the fight and is very composed in doing so. And that is something that you got to watch for in this fight. I think Keith Thurman is going to box and pick his spots when he wants to land those power shots. And something else that impresses me about Keith Thurman is he's highly conditioned and he carries his power into later rounds, which makes him a very dangerous fighter. Now, when I look at the matchup and who I think will win this fight, let's talk about advantages. Keith Thurman, the advantages he has in this fight, he's a bigger puncher. I believe he is the faster of the two fighters. And I also believe that Keith Thurman is the bigger man than Robert the Ghost Guerrero. Now, when I look at advantages Robert Guerrero has over Keith Thurman, I'd have to give him the edge in experience. And also, I'd have to give him the edge in inside fighting. Although I've not seen a lot of Keith One-Time Thurman on the inside, that's mainly my reasoning by picking Robert Guerrero because we've seen him on the inside in so many of his matches. There is one thing that Keith Thurman can exploit in Robert Guerrero's inside game, and that would be his use of uppercuts. If you watch Robert Guerrero's fights, he gets hit a ton with uppercuts, and that's something that Keith Thurman can definitely take advantage of throughout this fight. Also, you have to give Robert Guerrero the edge in chin really because we've seen him in so many wars and we've seen him take so many good shots. Keith Thurman was hurt against Soto Karass, but he showed heart of a champion, and he was hurt, but he fought back and he did well in doing so. So can't knock the guy too much for that. He did fight back. And Keith Thurman, in my opinion, I really enjoy watching this guy at 147 pounds. He's great for the sport of boxing, a throwback fighter, calling out all the big names. So my pick for this fight will be Keith One-Time Thurman by possible stoppage. I could see him busting up Robert Guerrero's face. You've seen Guerrero get cuts under his eyes. And if he could stop Robert Guerrero, that would really be something special because Robert Guerrero, as I was saying earlier, very tough and durable fighter. But I think the safe bet would be Keith Thurman by unanimous decision in this fight. Although this is not going to be an easy fight, I'm leaning towards Keith Thurman. I'd say 60-40 for this matchup. Like I said, Guerrero, very durable. And if he can back Thurman up and get him on the ropes where he can extend his punches, Robert Guerrero can possibly do some nice body work. And we'll see how Keith Thurman reacts to being on the inside with the dirty fighter on the inside like Robert Guerrero, if he can adjust to those techniques or not. So that's something interesting in this fight. but I picked Keith Thurman to win by unanimous decision. Um, look for much bigger things for him in the future. And shout out to Robert Guerrero for taking this fight against a very tough and game opponent in Keith Thurman. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning into the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And give me your thoughts on the fight. Who you guys have winning this highly anticipated matchup?